So now that I've transferred this drawing to this black sheet of paper, I'm going to use the Elmer's glue to carefully go over my drawing. This is going to take a while. Please don't use too much glue. There's a specific purpose for doing it like this. And this is the first time I've ever done this. So this is going to be a very interesting experiment. You may have heard me say, recently especially, that a lot of art is about experimentation. Art is primarily an expression of what you're doing, but it's also oftentimes an experiment. And I've never done this style before. It's something I've thought about before but never tried, so I'm trying it for the first time in our class. And you get to experience it with me. Hope you're as excited to do it as I am. As long as you do this slowly, you can get a pretty good bead. And if it does big bumps like that, that's actually okay. It's going to make it look more interesting. So again, I'm just carefully going over, squeezing fairly hard. If I can open this up a little. Maybe it'll make it, oh, that was too much. Again, it's okay to make mistakes as long as you're learning from them. Because again, that's kind of what this is all about. That is to say, the art class. This is probably the part that's going to take the longest to do. And you can already see there's going to be some globs on here. Try to avoid them as much as possible, but don't be overly concerned about it. One of the things that I'm thinking about as I'm doing this is, if this were spray painted on a wall, the surface of the wall would also be very uneven and rough. So the fact that all these pieces are also uneven and rough, with little mistakes on it, I think it's going to give it a lot of character. You can try and be as careful as possible, but there's going to be some rough parts. And that's okay. There's some very skinny lines and some very fat lines. And it's just all about how much you're squeezing and how wide open the glue is. Please take care when you're doing this though. Even though you're going to get big globs of glue, and some of them aren't going to look very good, like some of that area in there I'm not super happy with. But I'm not going to worry about it. This is the first time I've ever done this. Sorry if I'm repeating myself. So make sure you're paying attention to what shapes go in front of what other shapes. And it may take a couple of minutes to get the flow down on this glue bottle. Lights just went out. We're on a timer, can you tell? Actually, as I looked up at the computer when the lights went off, it might have been easier to see it with the lights off than with the lights on. So next time they go off, I think I'm going to just leave them off. Go in and fill in any gaps where the lines are too thin. So what we're going to do is we're going to glue this, and then we're going to let it set up overnight and come back the following day to finish it up. And that part actually might take a few days. We shall see. The end result's actually pretty cool. I saw the examples on the internet. But they weren't doing anything super precise like this. What they were doing was sunflowers. It's a very cool project, and maybe we'll do that one also, depending on how well this one turns out. The biggest challenge with this is trying to get it to flow out of the glue bottle nozzle. Once you get a good flow going and you sort of get the rhythm of how it flows on here, it actually goes pretty quickly. And again, there's going to be some mistakes in here. We're not going to worry about that because we can fix it when we color it. And I just saw a mistake. Went a little too far on the bottom of the eye. So about halfway through, I'm going to stop the video because this is getting tedious and you probably don't want to hear empty space. So I'll show you what it looks like on the next video after I finished all of this. So this is what it currently looks like. Again, it's kind of messy, but I'll probably come in and do another layer of it tomorrow before class starts. And hopefully it'll dry by then. In any event, this is kind of what the finished project looks like, at least this far along in the project. So I'm going to let this dry overnight, and then tomorrow I'll start coloring it. And what we're going to use to color it is chalk. Just regular street chalk, only I have different colors. Looks like this. Drawing chalk. So one of the things I'm noticing as the glue is starting to dry, it's starting to separate in places. So instead of there being a solid line here, you zoom in a bit, it's starting to bead up and pull away. So I'm just basically going to go over it now that it's starting to dry. This is only about 10 minutes after I finished it. Just going to fill in the gaps. Again, drawing very carefully with the glue. So you don't want to put too much glue on, because then you'll start losing the shape of the letters. But just try and make the lines kind of even. I still like the roughness of it. I just want to make sure to get what's called a bead, a nice bead of glue on there, so that when it completely dries, it'll be very hard, and then when you color over it with the chalk and fill in the gaps in between, it'll give it a very interesting look. The other thing that's kind of cool about this technique that I was thinking about as I've been gluing it is that we can do what's called a relief or temple rubbing, a relief painting. An example of a temple rubbing is like if you've ever taken a leaf and put it under a piece of paper and then scribbled over the top of it. I have an example right here, actually. So this is just the same leaf underneath the piece of paper, and with a colored pencil gone over the top of it. Here's another one on the back. That's kind of a fun project too. We could probably do that one later as more leaves fall off the trees. So if you have really big trees at home, especially if they've got really massive leaves on them, please start bringing them into class. And we can do that type of a project with the leaves like that too. So once this is dried, it'll leave this bump on here. And we can do the same thing with this as with those leaves that you just saw a minute ago. So I think that's about as much as I'm going to do on here. Maybe a few touch-ups. Looks almost spooky. Halloween's already over. Maybe we'll do this next year for Halloween with some scary looking letters. That might be fun. The other thing that probably would have made sense to do is, after doing the transfer, going over these lines with a white colored pencil or a light colored pencil, because it's starting to look a little confusing in here in some of these areas, especially in here, and especially where I made a mistake right there. But as I've said from the beginning of class this year, we're going to learn from our mistakes, and we're going to celebrate our mistakes, because that's the best way to learn. So I'm interested to see what this is going to look like tomorrow, which for all of you, of course, is today, because the video is not going to get posted until tomorrow morning. So this needs to dry overnight. I might hit it early in the morning again, just to see where some of the places are where it wasn't thick enough. But other than that, pretty satisfied with the way it's turning out. It's just very interesting how the glue is shrinking away from certain areas and pooling up.